Hey everyone, welcome to the Alkalign Lifestyle podcast, where we delve into the essence of living a bioelectric life through mind, body, and spirit alignment. Join us as we explore the transformative power of a plant-based diet, cellular cleansing, chakra alignment, meditation, and intentional living. Discover how raising the vibration of your cells can lead to infinite health and well-being. Our episodes cover topics ranging from nutrition and mental health to stress management and healthy movement in relationships. Get ready to embark on a journey towards becoming the greatest version of yourself with insights from our master chef, Drea Anoka, holistic health guru, Fidelis Anoka II, and special guests. Tune in to elevate your consciousness and embrace the Alkalign lifestyle. And here we are.
Yeah. This is episode 8, I think. Because I did the other one by myself. Because you were
solo.
You were busy. So I took it upon myself.
I was busy.
So no problem. Now we're back. Okay. So 8.
And
number.
We're back to actually talk about healing generational trauma.
Yeah.
And this is significant, particularly in some of the work that I'm doing on an individual level. But this actually comes up a lot when I am, for example, working at retreats and people are working through generational trauma. Retreats can be very focused on this. And there's a lot of uncovering about how generational trauma impacts our lives on an individual and a collective level. And so, what is generational trauma? Well, the way that I can explain it is generational trauma is traumas that are essentially handed down in repeat patterns throughout the lineage. And everything is energy, so trauma has an energetic tie to it. And that energy has a ripple effect, a cascading effect on all of the people that were involved in that trauma experience. For many, generational trauma can very much look like abuse of any kind, fears and anxieties, belief systems that have been challenged, money insecurities, addictions, I think I might have said that, but addictions of any kind. And so these are not only behavioral patterns or things that kind of show up in DNA, right? Or genetics, right? So people talk about genetics, it runs in our genes. Well, there's actually residue of trauma that is being passed down. And a lot of the times what people are talking about when they say it runs in the family, breast cancer or whatever, there's the energetic tie, a trauma, and then the byproduct of that trauma. So that could be cancer, that could be some sort of disease, again, that could be some sort of behavior, and that gets passed down through the lineage. And a lot of the times what comes up is, or how does it show up in our lives? How does it show up in our health? Well, some of the ways that this can show up would be having this constant anxiety, and you don't know where it comes from because you never had any experience in your life that is that invoked anxiety, right? Just as an example. But you could be carrying somebody else's anxiety around a particular situation that happened in their life, and you're holding that genetic pattern. And so that pattern is within you, and you are basically, your body is the vessel holding that energy. And so things like past life regression work wonders with healing generational trauma and uncovering. I mean, you can be carrying trauma as far back as 7 generations. And so these things, unless they're addressed, they get handed down to those that follow that generation. And so that's where we're at, and that's the work that I'm working on. And it's been completely and totally enlightening. It's been surprising, to say the least. And I think that you got to hear a lot of things that I shared about my experience through my journey so far.
Yeah.
And I'm actually curious about, like from, somebody who's hearing the things that I shared with you, what's it like on the other end?
It's, well, okay. When you see somebody, or when you like encounter somebody, I can relay it from an attitude change. I always look at attitude first, because if you look at the word trauma, they can be emotional, or they can be chemical, or they can be physical. So I could get hurt, or if I had an accident, I could have been, poisoned with something, or got sick with something chemical, or then I could have an emotional, or somebody maybe yelled or screamed, or the vibration or something, I feared me in some way, and I can hold all three of those. But when I see a person that is on the outside, and I look at it from reactionary, if they continue to be reactionary, or if they lose their reaction, then what is their actual reaction? Because you could always check and see somebody based upon patterning of just how they are responding. So, if I'm always on. So when somebody comes to me and they've had a really bad past, or a really bad way, if I can walk around that person and I don't feel agitation, or I don't feel some anger or rage or something that's coming, because it's going to come. You see, because that's where you start to see the emotional, or even the physical. Let's say if somebody you hit, or somebody hits you, or you'll have that. So if you can walk around and be entangled with the person, and you can feel the energy from the field, because you can download all the information, so I can feel it. So if I don't feel anything, and I'm starting to, it's clear. It's just as clear as I am walking with myself. Then I'm like, oh, okay, that person's on a different planet in their head. That person is in a different world.
Yeah.
So this entire time, if you've been, not if, because you've been going through this whole process. So, from the first start of the week, I always look at it from what's coming at me. So is anything coming at me? Is anything crazy happening to me today? Is that what's happening? How am I feeling? And am I feeling heavy, or pressurized, or held down today? What's happening to me today? And I'm always looking at it from, once it gets to a surrenderance point, I can always feel it's like you're walking uphill. It's like you're in a spinning class and you're riding up the hill, and then they tell you take the number down, and then you let off the gas a little bit, and then they say raise it up again, you're going back up the hill. And that's how it kind of feels in my head, because I'm entangled with this person who's doing that thing. So I may be somewhere else, and this people they don't really catch on to entanglement and how that works. But I was expressing to you, whatever you are feeling, I can feel that, whether you believe me or not. I'm like, no, I'm telling you that when I have this feeling, I'm walking, and now I feel like I'm crying or something. I'm like, why am I crying? I'm not doing anything. And I'm like, it's like one side of my head. It's like the other side is fine, yeah. But I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, I know why. Yeah, that's entanglement. This person has one side of my, oh, okay. So I'm like, well, I wonder what they're doing. We wonder what they're thinking about. So, I just don't respond with anger and rage. I'm like, okay, if I just keep on finding some patience, whatever you're uncovering should lead to going up the hill, and then there should be a release. Then there should be another hill, but if I understand that it's going up the hill, so then you can release, and then you're gonna go uphill again, then it doesn't hinder me. It's not, it's not like you're just lowering yourself down. I look at the ways of people. They don't have any, not about having any patience. It's about, you have to have the courage, literally, to go cross that person. You have to go and say, hey, I need this to be exchange and a communication. I need to know what's going on. Whether you know it or not, I don't care. But it's a part of me now. Because now I'm entangled with you. So now whatever you're entangled with is entangled with me. So I need to know what's going on because I'm a part of it now. And it's not that somebody's making you feel like you're in prison or like you don't owe anything. Like nobody's saying that. They're just saying, hey, it needs to come out. Let me help you. Here's a microphone. Talk, speak. Here, I'll stand right here. But you need to get this out because it's gonna hurt everything and it's an expansion. Once you get done, you don't have to go back, but you have to get it done. Somebody has to stop it and get it done. So somebody has to stop the patterning and get it done. So, okay, for instance, I was talking to my mentee last week and she was talking about her family. She was talking about specifically her grandmother. She was talking about on that side of the family. She was like, I wonder why my mom, is like so anxious. And she was like, oh, and she told me a story about how her grandmother watched the grandfather get hung. And I'm like, oh, this is like slavery time. Oh, I get it. Yeah, that's traumatic. That's an event a physical event for somebody who was taken with her, and then a traumatic event. So all of a sudden, the mom never saw anything like that. Physically, she wasn't consciously there, but she got the program downloaded.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, her heart rate is up, and she's living in this anxiety, and all the siblings. And I'm like, oh, that's how entanglement works. Yeah. That's a clear example of she didn't do anything. She just came into existence, and all of a sudden, she has these programs they're like viruses that are going in because of what somebody experienced in the past, and they didn't deal with it. You know, and so I think it's a great thing if you have somebody who's understanding, and can at least do their best to take away something, but you have to also be held in the law. Like you have to be accountable. Yeah. So so just because it's coming out doesn't mean that it comes out and you bring it the same way. You have to come out with intention and say, I'm gonna change this because this is not how it's working or not how it's worked in the past. So I think that's the most powerful thing for somebody to still be there, but hold them accountable because you have to hold yourself accountable and do your best to be understanding and know what's going on, but still know how to right this shit because it's gonna be like explosions constantly, like constant eruptions. Yeah. And if you can handle the constant eruptions, then you can start to say, hey, navigate your way because that's gonna, and that's ripple effect that you're talking about. Yeah. So, the person on the side would be part of the ripple effect. So I'm part of the ripple effect.
You're part of the ripple effect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that trauma, if you ask the question, like, what is the purpose of trauma? What is the purpose of generational trauma? Mm-hmm. And, like, why can't it just cut itself off as at that point in time when, the person that, whatever the experience was. Mm-hmm. And I think it's there, honestly, to teach us something. Mm-hmm. I think it's there to teach us compassion, to teach us forgiveness. Mm-hmm. I think it's there for so many reasons. And so I think that this work of addressing and healing generational trauma is such a beautiful act of self-love and love for all of those who are entangled with you as far back as your lineage goes. And so I wanted to touch on just some ways in which that generational trauma shows up in the body. Yeah. So I have experienced this firsthand where I've noticed it in like behaviors and mechanics and movements. Like the way that I might walk sometimes is it's like a resemblance of a family member. Mm-hmm. And I started to go really deep with this. Like my aunt in particular, sometimes I would find myself like walking like her. And I'm like, why am I walking like this? And then I realized like I'm walking like her and I'm not, and when it first happened, it started happening, I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm doing this. And then when I started to do this work, I realized that, well, there's an energetic tie and we have something in common, and the thing that's in common between her, my mother, and one of their cousins is that we've all experienced sexual abuse of some kind. And so, you know, that is, you know, somebody's gait is going to show you, like how they walk is going to show you what energy is stored in the body. And so it can show up in walks, it can show up in inflammation, aches and pains, it can show up in TMJ, it can show up in hair loss, it can show up in, again, they talked at the top of this podcast, but about disease of some kind. Autoimmune disease. And those are just some examples of ways in which that trauma can show up in the body. And, you know, it was so insightful when I started this whole experience for me started, and I would say it was like 2 years ago, because that was when my mom disclosed to me her experience with sexual abuse. Her twin sister and a cousin, they were all molested by a family member. And I remember my mom, she was drunk at the time, which was so outside of the norm for her, being intoxicated that early in the day, and even just like that level of intoxication. But when she explained to me, or when she told me, and then, you know, she chose, and part of the work that I'm doing now is to address this, but she chose that she did not want to share the identity of the person who did the act of molestation. And she felt like she needed to protect the person so that they would not be gone after, ostracized, hated, or any attention drawn to this person and the matter that happened. And a lot of people do that as a way to kind of cover the thing up, you know, but that halts the healing process. And so for me, you know, I had wondered why.
And not to throw you off, but I think that also it's not just protecting the person, but protecting themselves.
Right.
And then they also become powerless by protecting the person.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that is a good point.
You know, because I'm not to say people don't care. I'm just saying, like, I'm gonna care more about, somebody might come after me if I say something. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. If you really know how it works in terms of no separation, then you would out that so that person can change.
Yeah.
But you would be hiding because now you feel powerless. You don't feel as strong as you were before.
Yeah. No, that is a really good point. And also, you know, so I was wondering, like, why do we have this similarity? It makes sense. Like, I thought I was the only one in my family that had gone through any kind of sexual abuse of any kind. And then when I learned that my mom did, I was like, okay, there is a pattern here. You know, because your offspring are going to pick up on your patternings, right?
Yeah.
So this is why I am so passionate about changing that trajectory so that those who come after me won't have those same experiences.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have control of what their life is going to be like. I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah.
But if I can mitigate the excessive work for them to go through, I'm happy to do that. You know, because from somebody who's gone through those things, it is very painful. And I think just as a collective, like, we just want our species to thrive, right? So, but I realized that there was a pattern, and when I started doing the work that I'm doing now, which is actually really stemming from just going through this rose journey, the sacred rose healing journey. And within that, so what you do is you're downloading the frequency of the rose.
Yeah.
And it's giving you all sorts of information, recollection of things, releasing of things. And so that's when this stuff started to come up. And I realized that I needed to address these things. That's a big block, hindrance in my life, in why I was feeling very stuck.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I had picked up on the patterning and the trauma that had occurred with my mom.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned is that traumas can also come up in your dreams.
Yeah.
And in your meditations as well. And sometimes you can pick up on traumas from other people, which that's how you know it's a generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
When you're just meditating, or you're just like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like in an intimate space with yourself, and there's like a flashing memory that comes up, and you're like, why am I thinking of this? This is never, I don't have any memory of this. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it could be somebody else's, and you're picking up on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely had that experience. I've had that experience, and I remember one time when we were intimate together, and I remember almost like feeling like I was in a very violating space experience, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And I thought it over, and I really sat with it, and I was like, oh, I get it. That experience was tied to somebody else's experience that I was picking up on. So because and memories get stored away in a filing cabinet until we bring them up, and so those memories are also what I'm talking about with the trauma, the energy that's tied to the trauma that gets handed down.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So you mentioned, we actually already went over this, but why do you want to heal generational trauma? And again, that's just
it's mainly just to free up your energy space.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to become a whole person if you don't do that. And that's where it's tied to most generational trauma. Most traumas, period, they occur in first D center. So first D center means root and the sacral and the plexus, but mainly root if you're an athlete, because it's ankle, knee. That's part of your ankle, part of your knee. It's not just at your hip and general area. It's part of your ankle, part of your knee. So if you run, if you play sport, basketball, football, soccer, whatever, if you do something like that, then you have that. And so there's different things. There's literally different levels to it. And then you can never generate enough energy to go to the next step. And then you don't have any creativity. So if you already if it's a sexual space, which that's probably I'm not gonna say normal, but it's probably the most common, then you don't have any creativity. You don't have any vitality, but you don't have any energy. Because the energy you're supposed to get from all around you, that's supposed to be it's supposed to be the energy, and it's supposed to say potential energy, but it's potential energy of creation. So it's supposed to be sexual energy. So that's where you learn you're supposed to be able to just get the energy, and you're supposed to be able to receive the energy freely and not panic yourself or stress yourself or anything. You have the right energy. And so that's where it does become an actual thing if you can look at it from that perspective. Yeah. It will shift your actual perspective. But people don't look at it from your first three centers of energy, or they drain your energy because they have functions to do. And I think that the most pivotal, maybe not the most common, but probably the most common now, actually, is the plexus is in your gut. Because now you have that trauma, now you don't have any power or any will or any desire or any fire within you. Now you're just weak. And I think that's probably it's probably the most hindering thing. To feel powerless is probably the most hindering thing. But this is the one that tells you how to feel. Yeah. So if you have this one that tells you how to think up here in your brain, and this one that tells you how to feel down here in your plexus, that's connected to your entire body, you now see people taking alcohol and smoking and doing all these toxic things, and it doesn't matter look, if it's bad for you, it's bad for you. It's not like you gotta question how bad. 0.5%, maybe one sip of this, maybe some. It's like, no, it's bad for you. 100%, it's bad for you. So when it hits you And the plexus, because you connected to everything inside of you, all 12 of your, the 12 it's 12 cranial nerves. So when you have your plexus and you're eating bad stuff, or you're drinking bad things, it's because you have something that's blocking, trying to move out, and it's trying to get up, and you're just gonna be like, no, like, because subconsciously you took something from somebody else. Now it's not moving, and it's like, gosh, that's got to be a hindrance.
Yeah.
Because now your life is done. You know, you want to be this big person, but your energy can't go up so that you can speak outwardly what you want to do. You can't change your heart rhythm so that you want to love and open your heart to more things. You can't even see anything. Your eyes are blocked. Everything is blurry. Your vision is blurry. You can't imagine properly, and then you don't even feel great. Now everything is off, and now you create autoimmune disease. Yeah. And so now you're like, yeah, you would want to heal that because you would want to be free. You want to be free from that. That's freedom. Yeah. And then you wonder why people they have no discipline. They can't concentrate. And it's because they're here. So if everything that I experience that makes me feel great comes from my belly, right? And because this is where you're supposed to be, happy, sad, tired and awake. It really comes from your plexus. Yeah. So now you're just going to be all off. Everything's going to be off. And that's a challenge. Yeah.
Very good point. So you mentioned prior, you were mentioning that universal law and trauma coexist. Can you explain how they coexist?
Yeah, that's actually so.
And first start by explaining what universal law is for those who don't know.
So there's universal law, and the universal law is governed by nature. Nature governs what universal law is. Universal law is tied to your chakra energy wheels inside your body, lands inside of your actual body. So these laws are governed by you, because you were the one that created them. All of us created them. So we have the same laws. It's just like in the Western world, you have, the green light, yellow light, red light, and you drive on this side of the vehicle. In the eastern side, you have the opposite, and so it's like you start to have universal laws. Well, you started from the root, and you go on from root, sacral, plexus, and then heart, and then your throat, and then your third eye, and then your crown. But each one of these laws is just simply just a question. It's a question. There's really no 7 laws. There's really just one law. So it's not really like you have all of these, law of the tree, or law. It's not like that. But you have these 7 centers, but they have to go up, like you're hitting like a bell, and it sheds the energy upward, so it lights up the one law, which is going to be in your crown. So everything's mind. Your mind is the most powerful thing, but it has to get there so that you can unlock that. If you can't get the energy there, you never unlock it, and you have to do it by abiding by the universal law. You have to surrender to universal law. You don't create them. You don't do anything other than surrender to them. So you don't have to figure anything out. You just got to look at it and say, okay, from the bottom, what's the bottom? You have the root. You generate your energy. So ankle, knee, and genital. Okay, and then I'm generating energy so I can reproduce something, so I can create something. And then you have sacral right there. It's going to be right up. So digestion is going to be on the front side. Your bone in the back is going to be on the back side, which is, well, they call it horsetail, the ending of your spinal column. But then, you see, well, what's it governing? Well, if you don't have a system of digestion that passes through, okay, then you can't expel anything. So now you see why kidneys and all these things are blocked up. Now you see why people have intestinal issues and colon issues. And then you go up to the plexus in the gut, and everybody knows right now about gut health and how that's an impact. So you have power that comes from the gut, but they're all governed by something. So you would say at the root, you have generational energy. You have to create, charge yourself up, touching the ground, with your feet, or just being grounded. Then you have sacral, which would be polarization. That's your sexual organ. So you would say, okay, female and then male. So positive, negative, feminine, masculine, but they have to be harmonized because people have both. Men have both, women have both. Then you go, you keep on going up. You have plexus, cause and effect, because you're the cause of your effect. So I'm putting it in, and then there's an effect from what I'm putting in. Then you have the heart, which should be your rhythm, your actual heartbeat, your actual heart rhythm, based upon how much love do you have for self, which is everyone and everything, and your actual self, you. How much love are you expressing outwardly? Then you have your throat, which is what you say is what you're going to create. So if you know what you're saying, then you also know that that's connected to your DNA. So that's a lineage. You talk like your mother, father, grandfather. You're going to talk the exact same. You're going to, unless you go in there and be like, no, I don't want to do that. You're gonna be the exact same copy. So you'll hear yourself and you'll hear your speech sound like your siblings, sound like your aunts and uncles, and sound like the culture that you came from. And you may not even been born there, but you're still hearing that voice within you. And then you have the third eye, and that's looking at, you're corresponding with people on the outside. So how people are responding to you is directly related to how you're imagining everything on the outside. So one thing I got from my mom a long time ago was, everyone can create their world the way that they want to at any time, if you know the world's responding to you. If you don't, then you can't create the world the way you want to, because you don't know that you're already doing that. But you're always doing that. You're never not creating the world how you want, but you have to know that you're doing that. You have to actually be aware that you're doing that. If you don't know, you'll be going through thinking that you're a victim of life, and you're not. You're the creator of life. And then lastly, it's just everything is your mind. So whatever you think about yourself, how you see yourself, and that's where it comes to self-esteem and value and confidence, and like, how big are you really thinking? Like are you really, the idea of what you think you are? Because that's where you get I am principle. If you're gonna say I am tired, I am weak, I am, then why are you saying that? Because you have to look at all of that is the energy that comes from the bottom all the way to the top. So I never say that. I'm always energized. I'm always happy. I'm always grateful. Why? Because I know the law. And the law, the main one I'm talking about is because the first three are the ones that are usually blocked. You're going to get cause and effect. People aren't going to say that they're the cause of their effect. They're going to run from accountability. Because in past generations, I guarantee you, something bad probably happened to them.
Yeah. And
they're like, well, why did this happen to me? And I'm a good person. But it's like, no, it doesn't go off of it stack up, oh, I did this charity work. That's not how it works. It works based upon vibration. So unfortunately, people don't understand that attraction is equal to the vibration. So they skip the vibrational part. They just talk about attraction. But that's the magnetism that people have. But you have it because you also have the vibrational aspect. And so I think that when people don't have a concept of universal law, they mess themselves up, because that's the base that everybody should have. But you don't go to public school and learn, you don't go to really any school and learn universal law. There's no school that just goes to teach you universal law. It's not really like some common thing, which I understand now, but everybody should know universal law, because they'll know how to govern themselves. Because universal law teaches you how to live, essentially, and parent yourself, if that makes sense.
So how does trauma impact universal law, or vice versa? You
lose the principles of what they are. You don't even recognize that you're doing that in the space, and I believe that's what trauma does. Like, so think about, we talked about sexual trauma. You go tell somebody who's been raped, hey, it's still your fault. They'll look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Right? They'll be like, how is that my fault? And they'll insist, but it's like, listen, this is what universal law tells you. Somehow you did something to draw that experience into you. Somehow it's still your fault. And you got to tell somebody, hey, I don't know what, what habits that you got, lifestyle that you live, but whatever you got to change it, because that wouldn't have happened if you were vibrating high.
Yeah.
And that's where it impacts really big, because now it separates you from understanding the laws. Now you're thinking that now you start making up your own laws. And it's like, no, you can't make up your own laws. You can't take seeds and say, you know, if you have seeds with no water, they're still gonna grow. Probably not. They're probably not gonna grow that much. They're probably not gonna grow that well. Like, you need to have water. That's like a law. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like you can't just sit there and say, I can create this brand new thing. All of a sudden, that's just how the world works. That's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. It works based on universal law, and those laws don't change, and they're internal inside you. So yeah, you know, I remember I had to tell you that. I had to tell you that, and I remember you were just, I mean, you were mad, you know.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, but I was like, listen, it's your fault. I don't know how to tell you, you know, but you got to come to terms with it's your fault. You got to forgive yourself that you put yourself in there, because I guarantee it may have been from 100 years ago, 70 years ago, 50 years ago. It may have been carried through from aunt or mom, but it is expressed through you now. So now if you want to deal with that, then you got to deal with that. But it's your fault.
Yeah.
And so that's where you got to be like, oh, like, are you courageous enough to say that? You know, because that's how the traumas affect the universal law within the person.
Yeah.
You can't even express them anymore. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Can you explain how... Oh no, we got through them all.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Healing generational trauma. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
So some of you might actually be wondering, like, okay, I think I might have generational trauma. How can I identify that further, and how can I heal it?
Yeah.
And there's several ways that you can do this. There isn't just like one universal way. Working with a trauma specialist, somebody who actually understands energy and trauma and how these work in the body, is a place to start. And honestly, asking the questions.
Yeah.
You know, like really sitting with yourself and asking questions like, you know, like what generational trauma is stored in me that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
And asking that in a meditative space, right?
Without judgment.
Without judgment. And this is the most important part, is no judgment.
No judgment. Being
open to whatever is being shown or sent to you, whether it's through vibration, a voice, or a picture, or all of the above.
Yeah.
You know, and another way that I have found also helpful is through dreams, and actually, because I have been cleaning myself up more and not going to bed with like a bunch of food in my stomach, it helps me have more vivid dreams where I can actually pay attention. And I started noticing a pattern, and this is how I knew I had some work to do, because I was having dreams for like 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks consecutively, and my family members, each and every one of them, of my most immediate family, were in my dreams every night. And you were there sometimes, and some other people were there sometimes, but for the most part, they were all there. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, why are they in my dreams? You know? And so just like a little bit background, like I have had, you know, some challenges in my family dynamic, in my family relationship, over the past few years. And I think honestly, that was kind of like the thing that just kind of like broke open the curiosity around each other and our lineage and everything that we're all carrying and holding. And now, like, don't get me wrong, like we each had, you know, our own personal one-on-one interactions and challenges in our relationships. But I think that we've really been forced now to face those things. And so that's kind of where we're at. But for me, it was, gosh, these people keep coming up in my dreams. There's obviously something that I need to understand. And so I started, through meditations, asking, what is the significance of this? And what it showed me through this actually Rose journey, which I'm so glad that it's actually my client who offered me into this, invited me into this experience, and it's been so beautiful and so powerful. But she does guided meditations with sound frequencies, and it's really incredible. And in these meditations, there are stories, and in the storyline are like experiences and things that happen to the main character, which is you. And what I found was everything resonated with me so perfectly. I was like, is she talking about me specifically in these stories? Because this is matching up with my life experience. But I realized that it was just, so universal for people, but specifically for women, because women are in this container. But I started to realize, I see the patterns, I see the correlation, I see the connection between these meditations and stories and my dreams and things that have happened in my life. So I started to sit with it more and find the connection between. And then eventually I got to the point where I actually just, like, after about a day's worth of sitting in meditation, probably not a whole day, but probably a good few hours, I sat in meditation, and I just started receiving all of this, because you're just in such a receiving state. Just started receiving all this information. I was just like, whoa. And so that's when I talked with you about it. And then I actually started to, I went back into a meditation, and then it was like, because what I received as guidance was I need to have a conversation, or I need to address things with these people. And I was shown specifically everything that I needed to address with each individual person and write it in a letter. And so I received in a meditation exactly what to say, exactly what I needed to say. And so when you become aware of, if you know that there is a history of abuse, there's a history of sexual trauma, there's a history of something in your lineage, and you're aware of it. That's great that you're aware, because that mitigates a whole lot of work on your end. But when you're aware and you start gaining insights, it is really helpful. What I find helpful is to write a letter to the person that's most directly tied to that experience. So for me, for my mom, it's talking about the patterns and the traumas around sexual abuse, and why it's important for me to know the name of the person, so that I can go back and I can heal that tie with that person. Because that not only heals me, but that heals everyone else that is entangled with that experience.
That's right.
So that is some work that you can do. But also, if you have just traumatic experiences with a particular family member, and trauma doesn't have to be like a car crash or somebody beat you or anything like that. It could have been an experience where you got in an argument with somebody and you didn't fully recover from it. It wasn't fully, like, there was no closure, you know. And that's definitely, like, my family, it's been sweep stuff under the rug. And for me, like, I was even recalling back to when I was a kid and, like, the questions that I had. So these are things that I addressed in my letter to particular family members, to address these things, these curiosities, these experiences that came up that I never spoke on, and I never said anything or did anything. I never expressed my hurt. But then also acknowledging the part which you played in that. And I'm talking specifically, like, in your own personal trauma with your family or with whomever. And I even had to do one for an ex-partner, because I saw that there was a pattern in that relationship that was coming up in this relationship. So in order to heal this relationship, I had to heal that relationship.
That's right.
So it's, one, becoming aware and gaining clarity on what that trauma is and where it stems from. Is it generational or is it personal?
That's right.
And then two is, asking the question of, what do I need to do to heal this? And sometimes you will be guided to directly have a conversation with the person, or you might need to write a letter, or maybe you just have a conversation in a meditation.
That's right.
And I think that is based off of how tied you are to that person.
Yeah.
Because the closer you are tied to a person, the stronger the emotions are. That residual emotion can be. So you receive that guidance, and by writing a letter is so impactful, it's so powerful, but just saying essentially what you need to say in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
It is really helpful.
It's about not taking things personally. I think people take everything personally. I'm so detached from, not just, I just don't care. Like I'm not responsible for how you feel. So if you make me angry and I raise my voice because I'm angry, I don't really care how you feel. You shouldn't have came at me with that. You threw it out and it came back. So if you didn't throw it out, I wouldn't have sent it back. That's how I'm looking at it. But then also, because I'm smart enough, I'm not gonna cross any boundary to set everything out. I'm not gonna, because I understand how karma works. I'm not gonna do all that. That's my energy now. If I'm smarter about it, I have to know not to take things personal, not to, feel threatened in any way, shape, or form. Because some things, if you need to hear them, you need to hear them. But some people are just doing it based on defense mode.
Yeah.
And many people do things in defense mode because people with traumas have bad attitudes. That's what I've noticed. Many people with bad attitudes are because they have so much trauma built into themselves and they haven't expressed it outwardly. If you are purified from the inside out, you don't have anything to be angry about, because life is a most wonderful experience for you at every moment in time and point in space.
Yeah.
But if you have some things that you have not dealt with, things that you have not gotten out, and your energy feels like I'm being held down or I'm being suppressed, you're gonna take it out on any and everyone that's around, and you're gonna be so defensive. You're taking a defensive attitude towards life, but you don't need to. But in the feeling of trauma, you feel like you need to. And that's why people have to deal with it, so that they can then go to change their attitude. So if you look at it from, I'm big on attitude. So if your attitude is not positive, there's a reason for that. And that's mainly because no transparency. That's mainly because no integrity with yourself, and you don't have any vulnerability. You can't open yourself up. You think this story that you're holding on to is the right way to live or something, and it's not. You're not supposed to hold on to anything. You're supposed to give it all back. You're here, your experience, you give it out. Your experiences, give them out. Your information, give them out. And nobody's saying that you don't make it worth your while. I'm not saying that, but I'm telling you that that's how you're supposed to obtain things. You're supposed to go in through your experiences and you give it out. So we're supposed to be here for each other. So we're supposed to be creating for each other and contributing to each other and making things for each other. Yeah. And then we, attach ourselves in like a connection to have community. Most people are so separated and isolated right now. They're living in polarization, thinking this side and this side. But it's not like that. It's supposed to be, polarization is supposed to be moving you forward. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to help you to grow.
And isn't it interesting? That was an entire collective trauma that people went through, experience. And it's in some ways brought people closer, and then other ways it's distanced people even more.
Yeah, which is
but we're all
ridiculous.
We all experienced, ultimately the same thing.
That's
we
right.
had different experiences with that experience, but
that's right.
Everyone in the entire world experienced COVID and the effects of it.
People sitting inside their house, and it's an awkward thing to talk about it, but we was in Beverly Hills. I was trying to take you to the mall. Security's like, nah, hey, y'all gotta get out of here. I'm like, this is the Beverly Center. What you mean? He's like, nah. And I'm like, what? Like, they literally closed it like hours before we came in there. And then we really have to move away. Then we go to Westwood, and then we're just shopping at Target and Ralph's every day because we can't really get up to go anywhere else. So it's like, okay, then we like scrap this and we go to Orange County because it's open for us to do things. It was really awkward, you know. And you think about just that happening. Think about like back in the World War II and nuclear bombs and dropping, and like that stuff is crazy. And then think about slavery times. People have this stuff embedded in their DNA.
Yeah.
You know?
Actually, we were talking about swimming earlier. And
Swimming.
so there, just last point, is there are, you know, groups of people, particularly African Americans, that, you know, it's
afraid of the, afraid to get in the water.
Afraid of the water.
Yeah.
And it's because of generational trauma associated with water.
That's right.
Because they weren't taught to swim back in the day.
Slavery time.
In slavery times. And they
taught to fear everything.
Yeah, they drowned. And
it's crazy.
But even, you know, not just African American people that have commonly had or held on to that fear, but other people too. If you drowned in a different lifetime or whatever, because that energy, you know, it's neither created nor destroyed. When somebody passes on, it just transforms. So you get to inherit that energy, and
fear of flying or fear of height or stuff like that.
Yeah. So those are other ways in which you can identify generational trauma.
And so. You know, I'm telling you, when you start to see it, you're wondering why people are so unexpressive or they're so afraid. And it's because if you have issues, say you have injury, you see people walking with limping, they have all this stuck energy, so they have like their limbs are distorted or their gait is off, like you're talking about earlier. Like it's hard to see, people are just so stiff. So how you do anything is how you do everything. That's just the fact. How you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're always on time, always organized, always happy, always like in gratitude, or like you do everything like that. You always express that attitude outwardly. But if you always do things and like just getting by, or just that's why you start to see high performer on one side, mediocre on one side. That's also, it can also be due, and not probably could, it's probably more commonly due to generations.
Yeah.
And you may have a generation of people who they didn't think that they could do this. So they didn't try anymore. They didn't make the effort to go past their discomfort. You see, and so it's like, you're not gonna die by going past your discomfort. You're actually gonna grow stronger. So you should go within and go through the discomfort, because it's gonna help you at the end of the day. But yeah, I think it's more powerful than people give credit to, is the generational traumas. They stop you from advancing forward in your life because you're taking in these subconscious habits and patterns, and it's just stopping you from seeing the universal law for what it really is. You know? Yeah.
And also, you know, consciously making different decisions is a way that you can heal generational trauma. Like if you know, and like my grandmother on my dad's side was abusive towards my dad and one of his brothers, and I felt at many times that anger coming through me in circumstances where I got triggered. And for me, it was like, I have to make a different decision. And even like with certain things that I've had addictions to, you know, I'm grateful I was never addicted to hard drugs, but I did have a dependency on alcohol for a long time. And I was, you know, it was like making that conscious decision not to drink anymore. Well, that just changes the trajectory of my lineage after me.
That's right.
You know, that like heals at least a part of my lineage in association with alcohol, because that was a big one on both sides of my family.
That's right. I mean, we eat plant. I mean, my father's he's West African. He eats not plant. He eats a lot of meat. You know,
rice.
And then rice and meat, starch and meat, you know, as does my mom, who's Creole and French from Louisiana. They eat a lot of meat, you know, and so you start to wonder why people, they have these patterns and they have these sicknesses. So many of my mom's sisters, they have diabetes type 1 or 2. You know, they had to get insulin shots. They didn't understand the insulin came from their head and they're supposed to be able to release it, but they're eating so much crap that they're blocking their own self. They didn't understand that it was them. They're the mass murderers that are killing themselves. Nobody's killing them. They're killing themselves. And you know, my father's whole family, pretty much, he has like 2 or 3 siblings left that are still alive, and he's the oldest. And the rest of them just had bad addictions to things, and been passing on and dying and overdosing, and like, what are y'all doing? Like when they're doing something based on, they have these patterns embedded within them. Somebody didn't go in and break this stuff. Somebody didn't go in and say, this is not okay. We're gonna go this pathway. So I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. He smokes, I'm not smoking. He drinks, I'm not drinking. Have I drank? Yeah, before, yeah. And I was like, nah. But I went home to my mom's, and I went home to see my father, and I'm like, you know what? Man, I'm doing things like you. That's all right. Scrap that, scrap that, scrap that. And I'm like, I'm gonna make my own. Not that he's an evil person. I just don't want to carry that on. So I'm gonna make my own conscious, choices, and I want to know through research and experimentation, is this really right for me? You know, so yeah, like I think I believe it's really important for people to make their own choices and live their own lives. Then break these patterns, because you have to break the patterns of lifestyle, these generational things that happen. You know, you get past slavery in one clip. You got to get past slavery through every generation that's coming after that.
Yeah.
You're gonna have new plantation owners in 2050. It's gonna be a different way, but they're still gonna have the same thing. You're still gonna have plantation owners. You're still gonna have the oppressors and the slaves. You're gonna have both sides. You're still gonna carry itself maybe in different industries or whatever it is, but you're gonna have them, because that's just how it works. Because until you clean up the entire lineage and generation of all the people on the planet at the same time, then yeah, that's just how it is. So
yeah.
You know, unfortunately, but it's not really unfortunate if you know how to solve it. You know, so really all you got to do is get just a large percentage of the people to change their mind, and the rest of everybody else changes their mind. So yeah, be impactful. That's it.
Cool.
Good job.
You too. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Alkalign Lifestyle podcast. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and empowering as you continue on your journey towards a healthier and more balanced lifestyle. Remember, small changes can lead to significant transformations in your well-being. Stay tuned for more expert insights and practical tips on living the alkalign way.